Welcome to the Kratom Sobriety Podcast. This is Charlie. And today, this is a special interview, and we have a guest who works in the addiction treatment sector. Her name is Tori. Welcome.
Thank you, Charlie. Thanks for having me.
It's good to have somebody with a professional background tell us a little bit about what they're seeing in the field and people getting admitted into treatment, and if Kratom is starting to become more prevalent. Could you tell us about where you work and your career background?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a digital marketer for behavioral healthcare facilities. I primarily work for Aurora Healthcare, which we're a conglomerate of rehab centers throughout Georgia and Tennessee. We have a couple detoxes, a couple residential mental health programs, and then a couple PHP, IOP outpatient programs. And then I also founded another digital marketing company for rehab facilities. And I do that for facilities throughout the country, for California and Massachusetts, Florida. I got sober myself about a little over 8 years ago, and I dropped out of college because I got in a lot of trouble. And so as soon as I dropped out of college, I went to rehab, and I spent between the ages of 18 and 24 in and out of rehab. And when I was in college, my major was journalism and songwriting. And so when I got out of rehab, I wanted to insert myself in writing anything and everything I could. So because I did have personal experience with recovery at the time I was newly sober, I reached out to a bunch of different publications. One of them was a rehab website, just a community called Sober Nation. And so I started writing content for just like $20 an article, anything I could do to get my foot in the door. And at that point, I was doing that on the side, and I also was working as a tech in treatment. And then I moved up to admissions and was answering phone calls of people needing to get into treatment. And so really just like empathizing with people because I knew where they had come from. And I always did writing. That's always been my first love on the side. From there, I started just like learning more about how you can bring traffic and make someone's website visible. At that point, I went back and got a certification, a drug and alcohol counselor certification. So I do have that in the state of California. Work with facilities and owners and operators to help people find treatment, find these services. Yeah, that's primarily what I do. It's a lot. I wear a lot of hats, but it's really fun and it's really rewarding because I get to see people find life-saving treatment.
What do you do for fun these days? Any songwriting?
I do. I stopped playing guitar and songwriting for about 10 years. And recently, in the past couple months, I've been doing a lot of trauma healing myself. And I started writing again. I do yoga. I'm a little bit crunchy. I like hiking and backpacking and all that. I go going to shows and different things like that. I just love being outside. It's just really getting hot here in Florida.
And through all these years, you avoided Kratom.
I did. You know what? I avoided Kratom. And I know we were talking right before this. And it's just not something. When I was ripping and running, I was doing heroin in downtown Los Angeles at the time. And that was in, 2012, 2013. And then, the last time I got sober was 2017. And Kratom was just like, I don't think I knew what it was at the time. But today, like I go downtown and I see Kratom kava shops and people sitting outside drinking them. And just, it was never something that like I didn't really pique my interest at the time. Been in a program of recovery for years now, and it's just not something I got into. But I see people that have going through detox of Kratom, things like that, and it's just not good. I think people underestimate the effects of this.
When did you first start seeing clients coming in for Kratom related issues, and how has that changed over time?
Yeah, I would say in probably 2018, 2019 is when I first started seeing people sporadically here and there. And over time, I see it more and more often. Just being on the digital side, I'm not client facing, but I do get intake emails from everybody that comes in. And about half the time it's rarely isolated. It's always someone that's using benzos with it, opioids with it. And just another thing is before we started this, I was looking up the search volume of Kratom addiction, just of people typing in Kratom addiction on Google, like on a search engine. And there's about 1,200 searches per month about Kratom addiction. And I can only guess that number has gone up in the past years or so. And so that tells me that people are experiencing withdrawal and don't know what's happening to them and are trying to figure it out. So there's just a lot more potency of this.
Are there any background characteristics or demographics associated? I know you're not client facing or patient facing, but anything about a typical client that's dealing with Kratom?
What I have seen is that it's someone that has a history of can have a history of opioid use disorder, chronic pain, and they turn to Kratom and use it as a safer alternative. Also, in our mental health treatment centers, we have clients that have PTSD, ADHD, and anxiety, things like that, using Kratom to self-medicate and trying to find often, I know when I was trying to find anything to get out of myself. And I've struggled with severe anxiety myself and something, just anything. Okay, I see a sign on the side of the road. My anxiety is going to go to, oh my God, that and shiny bright lights and a neon sign in a vape store, something like that may help me. And it probably does for a little bit, I'm sure. Obviously, if it didn't, people wouldn't be geared to it. But I think it's also like high functioning professionals too, people that with lower doses, we have stimulant effects higher, it's opioid like effects. I've listened to a couple interviews where people use it like their daily coffee. So, yeah.
What do you know about the education that clients have? Are they aware that it has a addictive potential, or are they have bought into that it's safe and natural?
Oh, absolutely. Sure, there may be an exception, but I think buying into that it's safer, it's just a safer alternative. And I think this is a good analogy with vapes, right? People think that vapes are a safer alternative to cigarettes, but in reality, it's like not. They're just as bad, if not worse. And I think that's the same thing with Kratom. I think and just because it can be bought over the counter, alcohol can be bought over the counter, and alcohol is just incredibly deadly. So I think people are using that in that sense as being safer. When I was also reading an article about how there's people that are putting more potent, I didn't think we were talking about this, more potent Kratom in some of the capsules that are on the same effects, if not worse, as like morphine or something like that. So
some of the isolate products, 7-OHM products are very potent. And I appreciate that analogy with vaping, especially I think it's introducing a bunch of new customers that would never use nicotine, started through the door of vaping, and same with Kratom. There's an entrance ramp there for using an opiate-like substance with Kratom. But does your facility have a policy about harm reduction? Do you use harm reduction in your treatment approach?
Yeah, the facilities I work for specifically, a lot of medication-assisted treatment, Sublocade, Suboxone, naltrexone, Vivitrol, the injection form. And I think that is just so important because I think that can save so many lives. It's just another form of harm reduction. And I think that just in the initial period of like early sobriety, it's such a slippery slope. And I see so many people coming in that think they can go to detox and just for 2 weeks and then just get out and then everything's fine. And then, I'm going to go have a drink of alcohol. I'm going to go take some pills or go to the Kratom shop. Using that as something where I was doing opioids, now I can use this. It's like such a rationalization, and I just don't think there's enough education. So I think that in that sense, the medication-assisted treatment can really come in handy. And I was going to say this earlier too, I don't think there's enough education in regards to healthcare professionals with this. This is very new, and I don't think just in regards to addiction, there is enough education. Unless you're going to school strictly for addiction. But if you go to a regular physician and you just say, I'm struggling with this, or you're seeing a psychiatrist and they want to give you some benzos. Do you have a history of addiction? Many people will, you have family that struggle with addiction. It's such a slippery slope. And I just think there's so many more people that struggle with it that are either unaware or unwilling to talk about it because of stigma. So I appreciate this because, again, I think Kratom sobriety, recovery, addiction is underlooked, and it's so important.
When the clients come in, what kind of withdrawal symptoms are they having from Kratom, and how does it compare with other opioids?
Oh, a couple of years ago, I was doing admissions and digital marketing. So I would be answering phones as well and sending people to detox. And the worst case I ever saw was someone that had paranoia and went into a psychosis from Kratom. But I often see other times just a lot of opioid type withdrawal symptoms. So anxiety, insomnia, agitations, muscle aches, diarrhea, sweating, and just intense cravings, which can be really hard, especially if you're trying to do that all alone. And then I hear people that say if they're just using Kratom and let's say it's just they're a functional member of society, right? And that's just a habit that they've developed. I'm not bad enough. I think that's a huge thing because that is part of the denial process, right? I'm not bad enough. I don't need to do this. But in reality, if it is affecting your life and you're having some withdrawal symptoms, then let's take a look at that. And there's no problem with asking. There's no shame in asking for help.
I didn't ask this ahead of time, but do you know, is Kratom a substance that like typical insurance or Medicaid will cover if you have that as your drug of choice?
Because there is no like medical necessity. Essentially, what they're saying is because if you're Kratom cannot kill you if you're coming off of it, much like alcohol can kill you, benzodiazepines can kill you, right?
Yes.
So oftentimes insurance will not cover detox. Something more of a residential stay they'll cover because it's more medically necessary. And there's things, I work with a great team who they take down loads of information before someone's coming in to get everything possible so that we can get the most amount of time for someone's stay, because we can get into a whole nother conversation about insurance and lengths of stay and how much I think that insurance will try to get a client to stay for the least amount of time as possible. And it is just absolutely insane because someone who is beginning the recovery journey, it's an entire lifestyle change. And so just a month, 2 months, it didn't take overnight to get this way. It's not going to take overnight and just 2 months to change all these habits and all these neuroreceptors in the brain. We're literally changing these paths. So it's just mind-blowing to me. But again, to answer your question, and sorry, I go down into some rabbit holes sometimes. I think for detox, not necessarily insurance will cover, but residential, PHP, IOP, as we go through the full continuum of care, we're able to see coverage. It just depends. Then we get into the length of stay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you mentioned most the patients aren't Kratom alone. It's usually polysubstance abuse.
Yeah, opioids, stimulants, methamphetamines. It's always typically, and I don't want to say always because there's always the exception, but typically it's paired with something else to either have more euphoric effects or to sometimes people are using Kratom to deal with the come down of stimulants, things like that. But then there's another come down. So it's a double come down, which is interesting to me. But
what is the treatment approach for Kratom?
So really, and I could say this evidence-based treatment, we want obviously to get the Kratom out of someone's system first, and then going into the maladaptive coping mechanisms, right? When someone starts using alcohol, starts using opioids, in my perspective, I think we all start doing some of these things. Number one, I would say sure, genetics, but there's pain involved, whether that be chronic pain, whether that be emotional pain, physical pain, stress, right? So understanding how to navigate the stressors in your life that you once were using Kratom for, or whatever substance, like your vice is, using healthier alternatives. And so at a couple of our treatment centers, we use a lot of different things. And some of these are holistic. Obviously, if someone is struggling with anxiety, depression, like we want to stabilize them. And if they're using that, if they're using substances as an effect of that, we want to address that issue and stabilize them. Medication, psychiatry. Something that I love is DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, which was initially used for borderline personality disorder, but really is to help regulate mood and handle stress and just like change thought patterns. And 12-step obviously is one of my go-tos as well.
Yeah.
I'm very involved in the 12-step community, and then something that we also use at one of our facilities called Arbor Wellness is gene site testing, which is it's a mouse swab, and it will tell you what medications your genes are most appropriate for, which is really cool. But MAT, a lot of group therapy. I think I hear people when I used to be on the phones, people are saying, how many individual therapy sessions am I going to get a week? And I think individual therapy is great, but it's just not something that you can hear someone else's experience of exactly going through what you're going through. I actually had therapy today. I go to therapy every week as well. And I can sit and someone new in recovery can sit and talk with your therapist, but it's not going to do, they can tell you what to do till you're blue in the face, but sitting with someone, much like AA, much like NA, much like 12 steps, sitting with someone in a group therapy who's been where you've been, where they've been. I think there's just nothing like it when they can, someone who's been there can challenge you on the behaviors and the thought patterns that you're thinking about. I think is so powerful. Obviously in group therapy, there's a facilitator there, but it's just, I love group therapy and I think it provides connection. You don't feel so alone. I've often heard the opposite of addiction is connection. And I think that is incredibly true. So.
Yeah, that's one of the challenges we found in the Kratom world is very isolating because one, nobody knows about Kratom, including physicians and even some of the addiction places. And then the mainstream 12-step programs, it's not exactly a perfect fit. At your treatment facilities, do you screen for Kratom use?
Yeah, every person before they come into our program, and most treatment centers do this, they get a pre-assessment done over the phone. And this goes through an incredibly detailed assessment to help understand what's going on and what this person needs help with. So it goes from your family history, your substance use history, and so what you're using in Kratom. There's a specific question on there for Kratom, just so our staff knows if that's something that is going on and that is in that person's system that can be addressed. And I think that, and I want to go back to what you were saying too about the Kratom. I think not enough people are saying that it's a problem. When I got sober, like I was doing heroin and I went into AA and got sober because NA was not the most cohesive place where I was living at the time. But again, sorry, I'm jumping around now, but screening, that is absolutely something we do and make sure that someone coming in, we're aware of what's in their system.
Do you drug test for your clients, and is Kratom something you test for?
Yep. So when someone comes into detox, and then for the PHP IOP programs, they do test for Kratom in their urinalysis. And then for detox, obviously when they're coming in, yes, they are tested. And in our outpatient programs, they get tested once a week, whether they're living at home or in our sober living. So yeah, that is a real. Sometimes people can slip through their cracks and they're like, okay, I'm just going to use some Kratom over here because maybe that's something that they haven't used before and they are in an outpatient program. But again, when you're in treatment, that's not not something that obviously people come in and they're struggling with that anyway. So yeah.
Yeah. When a client is in aftercare or an outpatient, and let's say they test positive for Kratom, is that considered a relapse or how do you handle that?
Yeah, that is in our programs, that is considered a relapse. Typically, they will be on like a behavioral contract if that is something that happens. If it's brought into any of the housing, then that's another conversation, because obviously there's people in the community that may struggle with that even before coming into treatment. It if it is, they're not safe, it is an issue, they get stepped up to a higher level of care. If they refuse to go to a higher level of care, again, that's another conversation. It really just depends on the situation, what happened, where the kratom was used, how much was used, when it was used. There's so many variables here, but typically if someone is using, that is an indication to me that a different type of route of treatment is needed. And I wouldn't want to just keep someone after they relapsed on kratom in that same level of care. That is doing a huge disservice to that person. Giving them some more support around them is ideal.
How many of your facilities are where you work are in Florida versus the rest of the country?
So Florida, I have about 2 clients that I work with in Florida. And then I would say I've got a couple in California, a couple in Massachusetts, and then primarily Georgia and Tennessee. So it's interesting because years ago when I was studying people's websites, you wouldn't see a kratom addiction or a kratom detox page on their website. But now that is if I'm building someone a new website, I won't build them a website without a kratom page because it is so searched. I could look it up. Kratom withdrawal symptoms is a huge search term. And I often put a blog on someone's website about kratom withdrawal symptoms, because if someone is searching, if they think that they're withdrawing from that and they're going to Google that, well, it's a very indirect way to get someone to a website. And here I am spilling all my secrets. So here, it's a very indirect way to get someone to a website, depending on what their symptoms are and if that term is being searched. So
I'm going to play devil's advocate, and I think you've encountered some kratom advocates out there in the wild, probably especially being in Florida, but it sounds like you're just trying to drum up business by bad-mouthing kratom so that you can have more clients.
Listen, I'm not holding someone's hands to their phone or computer and making them search these things. I just provide the resources at the top of Google when they are searching these things, and again, just providing education, right? I just want to provide the facts. That's it. In this particular niche that I am in digital marketing, in addiction treatment, I think it's important to lay out the facts and, that this is not something that is particularly safe if it's a continued use, right? I think it is very addictive. And I know you found me because I was on a news reel in Nashville. And just to play the advocate, I was looking at some of the comments, like they posted that on Facebook when people are saying like, oh, there's so many mixed comments, right? Like kratom is great. And then like, I use kratom every day, just like a stimulant, just like a replacement for caffeine. And then you have a comment right underneath it that says kratom killed my son. So it's just very real. And again, like we could talk about alcohol, right? Sure, someone goes out on a Friday night and drinks once a week. It's very different than someone who is drinking every evening to deal with the pain of the loss of whatever, my sister that overdosed, right? I think there's just so many different variables, but I think the most important thing is giving people the information in order to do with it with what they will. So
I was just being facetious.
I smelled what you're stepping on.
Yeah, because we get accused of being FDA shills, and we're agents for the FDA, and we just want to oppress human freedom by bad mouthing kratom. But it is for many people, it is a very addictive substance, and this narrative from the advocates and the industry that it's not addictive, and that anybody that says so is just like spreading misinformation is ridiculous.
It's okay. Kratom originally it's a plant, right, from like Southeast Asia, but what they've done with it here is make it into a synthetic, which is not real, and it is more addictive. And they're putting, again, like you talked about, the isolates and the things in it that are incredibly more addictive. So
yeah, that's one of the frustrating things. Like the safety profile, they always want to compare it like they're all picking it off from a tree and just chewing the leaves and not looking at how it's really consumed in America. But
right. Which everything we could go on to another topic about anything that's consumed in America.
yeah, we've weaponized potatoes with French fries. So it's America. So
I love my French fries, but
I do once a week is probably fine. But if you're dosing French fries 6 times a day, like Kratom users do, then. But what are some of the misconceptions you're seeing about? It kind of leads into that question about Kratom and the public.
It's safe, right? It's a safer alternative. I think something is that people, especially people with chronic pain, can use it again as a safer alternative, and that it doesn't have as many side effects. But again, like the numbers, I have people coming into detox that are struggling with Kratom, and again, talking about those comments. I don't know the context around it, but people have died because of this. And so if you just look at this, I think people underestimate this. And I think it's sold over the counter. It's sold at a vape shop. It's sold at a tobacco shop. Okay, the things that are sold at tobacco shops, we need to talk about, or vape shops, because again, like those are not safe. And so I think, again, there's so many misconceptions. And I think people they see a sign, they hear that it's safe, and a lot of people are just going to close their eyes and go get it. And maybe play the devil's advocate for me, please. But I think I just don't think there's enough education around it.
Yeah. And I know you were asked when you did that news piece about some public policy, but what are some things that you think could be changed in terms of regulation or public awareness?
I mean, I would love to see more regulation around it. I think whether it be being a certain age to buy it, or just, again, like maybe a Kratom awareness meeting, something like that, because I think that there's a lot more people that struggle with it. And I think having some sort of common conversation, what you're doing here is huge, because if someone's struggling with Kratom and they type in Kratom on just Apple Podcasts, I'm sure you will come up. Like what kind of Kratom podcasts are there? But I think that, again, just having some more public policy or opening up a conversation with something bigger. This month is Mental Health Awareness Month, the month of May. And again, I can just post, I can just keep talking, but how many people use Kratom and how does that affect their mental health? I think that's huge. So I just think having a bigger conversation around this, and that out of sight, out of mind, people see this and they don't hear anything bad about it, so they automatically assume it's safe. But I think these conversations need to be a lot bigger. I love what Tennessee's doing. They're trying to put some regulation around it. Obviously, there's people that don't want that because of money. I think it will always be a back and forth thing. I don't think unfortunately, hopefully in the next couple of years, this will become a bigger conversation. But again, like Kratom just started coming on the scene in 2017, 18. That is not a long time. So it sucks.
The lack of social cues around Kratom, that there's any risks. And if you walk into a vape shop, there's not a lot of warnings or something. At the very least, it'd be great if they had a customer experience, like when you go to a pharmacy and you have to have this interface on a computer that says, if you're taking these types of medications, you shouldn't mix this with Kratom. If you're pregnant, your newborn could be born to be dependent. If you have any history of a previous substance abuse, there's a good chance of you to have a transfer addiction to Kratom. Yeah. I guess over the years, we've seen, talking about regulation, we've seen marijuana become more liberalized and more legal in more and more places. Over the last 10 years when you've worked in the industry, what have you seen going on with cannabis in terms of treatment?
Cannabis is such an interesting conversation to have, because I don't see the withdrawal symptoms from cannabis are nothing compared to Kratom. It's just not. I think people can get psychologically addicted to cannabis, and someone please come at me and say there's more withdrawal symptoms physically that they have had them, but I don't see I don't see any physical withdrawal symptoms from cannabis other than tiredness, lethargy, or a come down. And again, with cannabis, there's not much medical necessity for insurance providers. Oftentimes, it'll be paired with alcohol, right, for them to cover it, something like that. But I think kratom is a lot more serious than cannabis. There's a lot. And again, I don't know all the ingredients that are put into these cannabis things at these dispensaries, but I think there's a lot more dangerous things in kratom just as you see people coming down from it. It's really scary. So again, I don't want to put anything light on cannabis because I think it also can be incredibly psychologically addictive, but I don't think it's necessarily the same caliber as kratom.
Yeah, both of them there's this trend of really high potent products with both of them. And so some of those high TCH or THC products, you hear more adverse reports, but in general, you don't hear the withdrawal symptoms from cannabis. But then they both are compared, they're natural. And there's fan bases with both of them where there's almost a worship around them. And then
and it depends too. Like you could have someone that is taking cannabis every day and bipolar and goes into a psychosis. And I'm not downplaying, that is very real. But I think that the withdrawal symptoms, I think the addictive properties for kratom are a lot more harmful.
Yeah. And I appreciate the advocates. They might both view them, or if you call it plant medicine, don't demonize them. And we're not trying to demonize them. We're just trying to talk about them in real ways.
Yeah.
There can be some adverse outcomes with either of them. I'm of the opinion too, just in my personal life, and I'm not much of actually, in my personal life, marijuana makes me paranoid, so I'm not much of a fan of it.
Sure.
But anyway.
I was going to say to the people that are huge kratom advocates, good for you. That is absolutely fine. Be a kratom advocate. But we're just providing information. If you can do that and be functional in your life and not have any effects, my hat goes off to you. But I know for me, if I did pick up kratom, who knows what would happen? Come Christmas, I may be ruining my life in Mexico, drinking and putting something on my arm. You never know. So I don't want to take that chance or go there.
Yeah. If somebody wasn't able to go to a treatment center because they don't have the resources, do you have any recommendation of resources or tools that could help them?
Yeah, I think SAMHSA, I don't know if you've heard of SAMHSA, Substance Abuse Mental Health Services Administration. I think that reaching out to friends, family, reach out to me. Put my contact information on there. I will do what I can to help you. I know I have a lot of contacts, but I see people every day call in to treatment centers, and I'm going to start tearing up because I see people calling everyday treatment centers with no money, no insurance, and they can't get the help they need. And for me, that is devastating. And I found life-saving treatment myself at the time, I didn't have insurance, and I had to use family resources to help me get through treatment. And today I do what I can to help anybody find treatment or get on their feet, because the disease of addiction is very real. I've had family members, friends that have passed away from this. And I would say SAMHSA, there are state-run facilities. And if you're looking for treatment, reach out to someone knows someone, right? Someone knows anyone.
Yes.
And I hate giving generic answers. Just dial SAMHSA, because I think sometimes when you dial those numbers, it can be very discouraging when you get an automated person on the line and you're looking for someone to just hear you and hear what you're struggling with. Again, reach out to me. I can do what I can to help, but I also think reaching out, just being honest with a family member or friend, because someone knows someone, and there's no mistake. You will find the help that you need if you are open and honest about what you're struggling with.
And hopefully when you're listening to this, there's a 20% chance SAMHSA might be one of those agencies that the White House has eliminated by the time you hear this. Fingers crossed.
And that's what I say. Please, reach out to me. I will, wherever you're located, I will try and get you in contact with someone I know to find some help. So
thank you. We try to lighten things up a little bit. And what type of music do you listen to?
I love this question after we've had a 40-minute
Yes.
conversation about Kratom. I listen to a lot of jam music. I just actually went and saw Billy Strings a couple weeks ago. I'm not sure if you know who that is, but
Yes.
probably one of the best concerts I've ever been to in my life. I like a lot of Fish, Grateful Dead. I like a lot of singer-songwriter stuff too. Country, whatever, everything. I like everything. So,
Do you have any pets?
I do. You might have heard her walking in here. I have a little corgi, and her name is Judy. And she's my, essentially, I don't want to be that person, but she's my child. So,
Judy?
Judy, yes, like big booty Judy,
Ah.
like a little corgi. Yeah. Yeah.
Are there any takeaway lessons you want to share with listeners or any closing remarks?
No, I think I just want to say the help is available if you want it, if you need it. And it's never too late. I hate to say that, but it's just like it's never too late to start. And recovery is so much more than just like putting down the kratom or the alcohol, whatever substance you may be struggling with. And it's just incredibly beautiful. Life is beautiful. And there's many people that have done this. And if you're listening to this and you are struggling, like, you're not alone. So
You're not alone. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So we'll really appreciate you coming on. And
thank you. Thank you for having me, Charlie. I really appreciate it after we've rescheduled so many times.
yes, same here.